Hello, and this is a short presentation on the results of our study on the impact of social distancing on face-to-face meetups for software practitioners. Let me briefly talk about what a meetup is before we get started. A meetup is a community of people who share an interest and regularly meet up in person. And by nature, this community is place-based. Communities like this, meetups, have been growing rapidly in recent years due to the emergence of event-based social networks, or ESBNs. The best known commercial ESBN is meetup.com, but there are many others, including eventbrite.com, Facebook, and other types of social media which can be used for the same purpose. These networks have made it easy for groups of strangers in an area who share an interest to arrange to meet each other and discuss that interest in person. And actually, although meetups can be about any topic, and they are, a very, very large number of meetups are focused specifically on the topics of technology. And we do know that certainly in the UK, where our research has been conducted, there were many thousands of software professionals who attend a meetup regularly in their local area. The most common topic that a meetup would be focused on in technology is usually programming. Many meetups are dedicated to a particular programming language like Java or Go, but many others are also dedicated to generalist topics or other areas such as DevOps or cloud computing, data science, and many other topics as well. There's been very little previous research on meetup communities, and not very much is known about them. They are known, there are a couple of previous studies which have shown that they are known to be forums for sharing knowledge, learning practical skills, building reputation, and gaining reassurance as well. They're particularly well populated with mid-career practitioners who find it reassuring to be able to meet their peers working in similar roles in different places and reassure themselves that their knowledge is up to date and that their approach and practices are reasonable. That's the background, but during the pandemic, meetup communities, certainly in the UK at the end of March 2020, the UK entered its lockdown period, and meetup communities were forced to very quickly either halt all their meetings completely or pivot entirely to online meetings only. It's a very big change for a group of communities which have always been defined by their ability to meet face-to-face. And so we were interested to find out how have software practitioners experienced that change, particularly the software practitioners who do participate in these communities. So our research questions, there were several research questions which are detailed in our paper. Let me show you perhaps a few key outputs from one of our questions, which was, what do meetup participants to be the strengths and weaknesses of in-person technology meetups, and correspondingly strengths and weaknesses of virtual technology meetups, specifically during the pandemic. Because meetups have only been virtual during the pandemic, our conclusions are very much limited to experiences whilst there's a pandemic on. We had 251 responses from all around the UK cities from many different types of technology cluster and different regions. The respondents are overwhelmingly dominated by 90%. Of our respondents are practicing software professionals. They're relatively experienced, with 69% have more than 10 years experience in their current technology role, and the vast majority have been participating in a meetup for at least 3 years. And so we feel that the respondents we have are capable of giving us a very well-reasoned experience of how the pandemic and social distancing have affected their experience of meetups. Let me briefly summarise what they perceive to be the strengths of meeting up in person. It probably won't surprise you to find that what they like most about in-person meetups is meeting people. They also discuss learning, and in particular, their comments really make clear that for many people, it's not just about learning through a structured talk. Many meetups do have a structured talk from an expert speaker, but that's not the only way you learn. Many people particularly emphasise that they learn through discussion with other people at the meetup. Most meetups provide plenty of time for networking as part of their reason, so you have opportunities to talk to peers. That leads us to the conclusion that meetups may be particularly useful for transferring informal tacit knowledge accumulated through experience. It's known from research in the fields of knowledge management that such knowledge is particularly key for software development. We learn how to develop software through doing. And many of the comments made by our participants emphasise that. Weaknesses of meeting up in person. It was worth mentioning that most of our respondents strongly prefer in-person meetups, perhaps unsurprisingly, but a significant number, 30, described challenges that they had with in-person meetups. Things like the topics of the meetup wasn't perhaps what was advertised, and they had then made a commitment to come and spend the evening at an event which maybe wasn't quite as relevant for them as they had hoped. And that is on top of things like commitments and of costs and time to travel to a meetup. And some people mentioned social challenges, such as that the meetup could be very intimidating or perhaps dominated by specific individuals. Let's talk briefly about virtual meetups and what our respondents thought were some of the weaknesses of virtual meetups during the pandemic. It won't surprise you to learn that they felt very strongly that the conversation they were capable of having at a virtual meetup was not of a quality that could support their key goals. In particular, they weren't really able to learn through discussion, and networking was virtually impossible. Despite that, there are many positives of virtual meetups, and some respondents in our survey were quite robust in these comments. In particular, some people really like learning at virtual meetups, and things like being able to see people's faces in the Zoom grid, being able to share slides very well, being able to see the structures screen, and also the fact that you could, for once, choose to attend a meetup based on the topic, not the location. So you could choose to attend any meetup anywhere in the world, as long as you could spare the time, but you weren't restricted to only attending those meetings which are in your local area. That rather makes a fundamental change to the meetup function and takes it away from being a community of people who are place-based to a shifting community of people who are topic-based. Many people commented on the fact that there's very low time commitment and no travel involved to go to a meetup, which was a very big benefit for many people. 74 of our respondents specifically mentioned that. And that does emphasise again the shift away from being a place-based community towards a topic-based community instead. It also suggests that there's a shift away from being a place where you can discuss with peers and transfer synthetic context-based tacit knowledge based on experience, and more towards being a forum for sharing formally codified knowledge through structured talks and expert speakers. People also like the fact that virtual meetups are a lot less intimidating and that you could discreetly leave without attracting attention if maybe the topic turned out to be not as relevant for your own work as you had hoped. We do have a few key takeaway points. In particular, organisers do need to understand the goals and motivations of the members of their meetup community. For many communities that will be obvious, but for some communities actually it's not very obvious what members really want from meetings, so it's worth making sure that that's well understood. It is clear that some participants genuinely struggle with in-person events and find them perhaps intimidating or difficult to break into. And some of that may be possible to overcome by ensuring that events are as welcoming as possible. But it's also worth considering whether in the long term some blended or virtual events may be useful, perhaps alongside a programme of in-person, to ensure that the topics are accessible. There were some specific types of meetings which we feel might be more suited to virtual events, which are listed in our paper. And it's worth noting that there are genuine barriers to attending. Very many thanks for listening.